Okay. So we'll go ahead, like I said, and do kind of that parting wisdom, if you will. And then we do have a few questions, it looks like, from the webinar, and then we'll just kind of open it up to general questions that you guys have. I think I turned that back off too. So here's some things to kind of help yourself out. Kathy can I tell them you have 25 years of experience? You've been with Iowa State, yeah. Okay, so 25 years of experience, right? So these are some of the things that Kathy and I sat down and kind of talked about, things that really could help you, improve. They're not anything probably earth-shattering that you've kind of not thought about before, but let's see. Okay. So one of the things is read all of your instructions, like read that thing that said the terms and conditions, because that'll have good information for you. Read the VimCast instructions. Read what gets put on the message board. One thing that you might want to do is to go in your spam folder every once in a while, because sometimes VimCast and sometimes Iowa State's like automated emails go into spam. Sometimes my emails go into spam because I send a lot of emails. So definitely check that out too. That will be helpful, and then you can add them, those email addresses to your book, or sorry. Okay. So you can add those to your like address book or whatever. Proofread, again, proofread everything too. So one of the things that we talked about, like Dr. Vengren said, the essays are so important. So when you have people proofread, proofread it once more before you hit submit. I think of the story that Kathy, you've told me before, and it just, and I'm glad that it had a happy ending, but someone, instead of like copying and pasting, it into an email saying, hey, can you look over my essay? This person said, here's my login information. Can you go in and check, proofread my essay? So her friend did, and she added a line that she thought was really funny at the end of the essay, just to kind of joke around with her friend. It said something about, what was it, like serving the poor white trash. Not something you want in your veterinary application, right? So the student did not proofread once more. She was like, okay, my friend took out all of the errors. That's fantastic. Submit. Our admissions committee reached out to that person and said, hey, did you really mean to write this? Because we need to talk about this. The girl was mortified, said, absolutely not. I didn't mean to write that. And she's great. She got in, but yes, but so again, we show you things like those, not so great letters of recommendation, and tell you those stories to kind of, really drive home the fact that yes, you really do have, think everybody's great and helping you out. And for the most part, like that person probably did take out a lot of, grammatical errors, but proofread everything. So sorry,
the other thing that
get off my soapbox.
When, this is the same thing. People will, as you go through, you'll have to type something into the essay in order to go forward. So you get things like fill in later. They never filled it in later. So really, before you submit your application, make sure you've looked at every question, you've looked at everything. We just can't stress it any further, because once you hit submit, you can't go back in and change your VimCast application. I think you can change your address and phone number and stuff if that changes, but you can't change your essays, things like that. So be very careful, because these people never thought anything weird would happen to them either. So you just need to give it once. Before you hit submit, give it one more.
Yep. Yes. And another good thing to think about is to communicate. I mean, like I said, I mean, hopefully we've driven home that point as well, that Kathy and I are here for any questions that you might have. So communicate with us, communicate with VimCast, communicate with your evaluators. They, for the most part, right, we're all busy. If somebody tells me, oh no, I'm not busy, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I want your life then. No, but I mean, we're all overscheduled. We're all overcommitted. That's the nature of our culture right now. So it's okay to say to that, that FFA leader, that veterinarian, that youth minister, that, whoever it is that you're getting a letter of recommendation from, like, hey, I'm filling out my application. Here's where I am. Really excited. Just wondered, if you had a chance to fill out that evaluation, or, if there's any questions I can answer for you, I'm with that, or whatever it is, like a friendly little reminder is never a bad thing. I know that I've heard from some veterinarians who say, yes, remind me about that, remind me a week before it's due or whatever. So communicate with them. That's okay. Communicate with undergrad institutions, those transcripts that you're like waiting, impatiently for. Communicate with them. Let them know, hey, I'm waiting for this. We're getting close to the deadline. Can you let me know if those have been sent or whatever? So.
Yeah, now I'm going to get on my soapbox. If you think you have a problem anywhere, let me know. I'll work with anybody. If for some reason a transcript isn't coming in or whatever, I want to work with you. Don't tell me this 2 days before the deadline. If you ever think of anything, it's like, oh, I'm worried about that evaluation, or I don't know why this transcript hasn't gotten to VimCast, tell me. I actually had a person this year said, I wasn't notified. February 15th when we'll notify you. That will be on the message board. Said, I wasn't notified. Where am I at? She'd been denied because she never responded to our questions we had for her on her application way back in October. You need to check the message board. If you think you're having a problem, let me know, because after the deadline, I cannot help you anymore. And I really do want to help you. If there's something, something really messed up and you didn't get a transcript in or something like that, let me know. But I need to know well in advance of the deadline. So that's why we say, check your status on VimCast, check your status with us. Again, don't think once you've submitted the supplemental that it all is free and clear. If you do that, you're going to end up like this person saying, well, I didn't, what was my status at the end? At the end, she'd been denied way back in October, and she called me after February. So please just check your statuses.
Yeah.
Can't say anything more than that.
Yeah, and we will welcome any question. We would absolutely rather have 10 emails from you a week, hopefully not 10 emails from you a day, but you let us know what questions. One of the things that I know Kathy and I have talked about is that, those people like you who communicate, who show up to application workshops and who, send us emails about questions and everything like that, typically are the people who don't have, like glaring issues. It's the people who never do. So even if you've been thinking like, I sent in my supplemental application and I really haven't heard anything from Iowa State in a couple of weeks, I would, check that message board, because usually there's some communication from us. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, we can go back there. I just didn't know if we had another slide about help yourself. So anyway, I think that those are pretty much the things. Like Sammy said, working on that application in little chunks is a really good way to do it. It is very, very, very daunting. So, if you were like, yes, I'm going to get it all done this weekend. Okay, great. But then, like Sammy said, sit with it and, maybe reread those essays again, and everything like that. So anything else on help yourself? Okay. So we have about 25 minutes left. We'll just kind of open it up to general questions. I've got a couple on the webinar that we'll answer, and then we can have you guys shoot questions, whatever you've got. So, okay, is there any advantage acceptance-wise to submitting your application early?
Not really acceptance-wise, but it does give you a chance to clear up any problems that we may not have anticipated, or you may not have anticipated with your application. Again, if people, the last week before the deadline, everybody's submitting something. And again, after the deadline passes, I can't help you. You get it in the 1st of August, you will know when it's in committee review, if we've had any problems, and it gives you time to reconcile any problems you may have. So there isn't an admissions advantage because our admissions committee is going to review everybody, even if you were the last person to submit. But where it does become an advantage is that you can resolve problems. The other thing is if you submit right close to the deadline, particularly even that day, computer problems arise. We will not say, okay, you had a computer problem, we'll get your application in. VMCAS sends all the, and they get a lot of them at that time when people are trying to submit that last day, saying, well, I had this problem or I had that problem and stuff like that. They send them all to the colleges. We will not accept any applications if you had some type of an error happen to you on the deadline day. And we also can't resolve any problems that we find right at the end.
Yeah. The deadline is firm. The only, I mean, the only, I think the only last couple of times that that VMCAS and then, we have followed suit, with that have been for hurricanes. So like a good portion of the country or the coast has been hit by a hurricane. So last year, the hurricanes in Texas and Puerto Rico caused us to extend our deadlines to accommodate students, who maybe had taken classes at an institution there, or were residents, and we're dealing with things a little bit more important than the vet school application, like lack of power and running water and things like that.
Yeah,
but I mean that September 17th is
basically
D-Day.
Any national emergency is the only time. There's been 4 times. 2 hurricanes that she mentioned last year, 9/11, and Hurricane Katrina. Those are the only time that VMCAS has extended anything.
Yep.
So it has to be pretty major.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Any questions that you guys have? Any last minute questions, things that we kind of breezed by that you want a little bit more information about? Yes. Ooh, I don't think we've calculated that.
I don't keep track of that. And right now, we're looking at 200 hours of either individual or combined experience. A lot of times people can have thousands of hours of experience, but really haven't learned anything from it. So it could be all research, it can be all animal, it can be all veterinary. We always try to encourage people have some veterinary experience. Just because it looks better, you can answer the questions better if you at least observed a clinic, or if you're research, that's fine. If that's what your goal of getting your DVM is for, go for it. You can have 200 hours of research experience. So yeah, how many they have, and it really doesn't mean, because if somebody worked at a kennel, but all they ever did at that kennel was clean kennels, then we don't care whether they have 2,000 hours. You can probably learn everything the first week you're there. So yeah, different experiences have different levels of how they're considered.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's a good thing. Your experience should kind of reflect those career goals for the most part, right? So if I want to be a veterinarian in private practice, I don't need to necessarily feel badly that I don't have any research experience, because I'm not really interested in research. If the opportunity presents itself and I would like to, yeah, great, go for it. And it might be something where you can say, I, dabbled in research and I know now that I really want to be in private practice. It's when the private, or when the experience is like all private practice and you're like, I want to be a researcher and develop new vaccines and everything like that. It's the committee might say, do they really know what veterinary research is versus clinical practice? So those sorts of things. But okay. Let's see here. Any questions from the room? Really quick. Yes. Oh,
They're going to want a letter from one person, and it can be the main person. I mean, if they want to get together, but it has to be under one person's name. I shouldn't say it has to be. It doesn't have to be, but they're going to look at it that way. Again, that would be the person we would contact if they had a question, something like that. So it can be from one, and I don't think, I can't imagine that they would mind having, one person sign a letter.
Along with the letters of recommendation. Oh no, sorry, this is about experience, but it's a good question. Is it beneficial? So there's that contact supervisor giving us permission to contact supervisor. What is the benefit of that? Do we ever contact supervisors? How does that play into the application?
It's basically if we have a question about something that's been written on the application. We did have one time where a veterinarian had some not really encouraging words for the applicant. However, they employed them for 6 years. So we wanted to know if the committee sees something they don't quite understand, they want to understand what's going on, then they will contact the employer. It also has to do with the fact that sometimes evaluators will say things that the applicant hasn't said, and that can be good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. Sometimes they may want to check on that. I know that one had mentioned some struggles that the applicant had gone through and stuff. The applicant didn't mention any of that in their application. That evaluator was contacted for just a little bit more information so that it gave the committee a little better understanding of what was going on. So that's the advantage, that we can go ahead and contact that about any questions. Again, we still had like the person that sent a menu instead of a letter, the person that wrote the wrong, uploaded the letter that was for another person, and they did write a totally different letter for the applicant that we had. So it's to handle any of those types of problems.
Yeah. So for either the letter of recommendation or the experience, it's good to let us communicate with those people. Again, we're not going to say, oh, did this person really do that? Unless you have 20,000 hours more than you've been alive. Maybe we're going to contact that, clinic and say, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about that? So, but yeah, it's good for for our admissions committee to be able to have the option to kind of dig a little bit deeper if they need to.
And just to give people an idea, when we talk about contacting either for experience or evaluations, it's going to happen maybe 20 times a year. So out of, again, 1,200 applicants. So chances of it happening are slim, but the committee likes to, and especially when a mistake's been made, we like to be able to contact them.
Okay, great. Any questions from the room? Okay, our webinar people have been furiously typing. So what about like APVMA symposium? Where does that kind of fall in as far as attending that, or maybe it's, another conference, those sorts of kind of continuing ed learning experiences?
That would all come under extracurricular.
Okay.
That's kind of like the extracurricular groups that you belong to.
Yes. So this question, I think I answered it individually a couple times, but so for us, for retaking grades or retaking classes, we take the most recent grade. For better or for worse, we take the most recent grade. Some schools don't. Some schools will average. Some schools will do different things. So you want to probably reach out to those schools if you're applying to multiple schools and thinking about retaking coursework. But we will take the most recent grade. So if you're retaking OChem or something and it looks great, fantastic. If it doesn't look great, you might want to consider, taking another stab at it. Or
yeah, one of the things, just to kind of show you what this is like, because it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. We had one person retake one of the sciences and got a C minus. The time before they had gotten a C. Okay, we looked at it. They met the requirement the first time. They didn't have to retake the course. With a grade of C, you meet the requirement. However, the second time they got a C minus. That was what was included in the GPA calculations. We didn't make them retake it again because they'd already made a grade sufficient. But the fact that you retake it and don't do better kind of shows us something. In fact, some people will decide in the middle of the course, I've already made that, I made a C, so I don't need to finish this course, and get an F. We will use the F. We expect you, if you plan to retake the course, we expect you to do better in it.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. I just want to make sure that if you guys have questions, we're good. Okay. So there's a question on here about what maybe is more valued as far as experience goes. So in those three categories, animal veterinary research is one, better or higher valued, gains more points than another?
No.
Okay.
Basically, no, they are all equivalent. Again, they should match with your goals. Well, it's probably been 8 or 10 years ago now. Large animal, they kept saying there was a shortage in large animal veterinarians. Okay, everybody wanted to be a large animal veterinarian. That's what they said they wanted to be on their application. They only had small animal experience. What do you know about being a large animal veterinarian if you haven't worked with large animals? It has to line up with your experience. It's great if you have all three, because then you can say, I like this one better than this one. But if you want to be in private practice, you've only worked with companion animal doctor, perfectly fine. That'll be considered the same as somebody who's got all three.
Great. Thank you. And then we had a question about how do advanced degrees, the coursework, do those file into the last 45? Do they work for some science GPA science requirements? So as far as masters and PhDs, how do those translate?
The classroom courses that you take getting your PhD or your master's do count in the last 45. If anatomy and physiology is a big one that we can take a whole variety of courses. So if you've done better in a course you took as a graduate student versus what you took in undergraduate, that both would fulfill our requirement, we will take the best grade. So that's how they figure in. We do not include seminar. We don't include research. There's some other ones where they're kind of like independent study. If it's not undergraduate independent studies, we take, depending upon what the subject is. Generally, graduate independent studies, we don't take.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other questions that you guys have? No, we answered them all. That's awesome. That's the goal, is to have you leave here being like, I think I got this. So we've got about 10 minutes left. We will have a student coming around to lead you guys on a tour, whoever would like. And then, but if you've seen the place and you're like, I need a nap or lunch, I guess it's about lunchtime, you're more than welcome to head out. Kathy and I will stick around. There are, Kathy, a couple of questions. You mind hopping on the Q&A here and answering? One, I think you might have to to type back to her or something because I hit the wrong button. But and Kathy and I will stay here and kind of chat with you. Like I said, Alex should be around any second I shouldn't say any second, about 5 or 10 minutes for that tour. So thank you guys very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and happy application cycle.